himself left notes that his map was drawn from pre-existing information and maps. However, he himself did not venture any suggestions as to the identity of the cartographers who produced these earlier maps. In 1963, however, Professor Hapgood proposed a novel and thought-provoking solution to the problem. He argued that some of the source maps the Admiral had made use of, in particular the ones that were said to date back to the 4th century BC, had themselves been based on even older sources, which in turn had been based on sources originating in the furthest of antiquity. There was, he asserted, irrefutable evidence that the Earth had been comprehensively mapped before 4000 BC by a hitherto unknown and undiscovered civilization, which had achieved a high level of technological advancement. The Piri-Reis anomaly and the mysteries of Antarctica are described with significant detail in Graham Hancock's book, Fingerprints of the Gods, and we highly recommend giving it a read, along with his follow-up book, Magicians of the Gods. Now, before we move on, there's just a few more interesting things that I have to share with you about Antarctica. The first is a particularly curious accidental leak of information that supports this idea that something is going on down there, and it actually comes from Fitbit. You see, recently Fitbit published a world heat map with Strava to show where people are commonly wearing their Fitbits. Now, I suppose most people do not disable their location services, because this published map at first showed a number of curious formations under the ice in Antarctica, including a large ring and some other underground bases. Since this was initially published, the government, or whoever, has forced Fitbit to remove these images from their public heat map, but you can still find a few YouTube videos of people pointing them out. Well, hey, like this one. Finally, in the last several years, photos that were taken using Google Earth were publicized, causing more than a few heads to turn. Here is one that shows a rather curious formation that is clearly not natural to the environment. And here is one that looks more than a little bit like a pyramid. Many were quick to suggest that this was a remnant of some Atlantean civilization, but many critics were quick to put forth that it was just a four-sided mountain, and that pyramid-shaped peaks are very common, such as the Matterhorn in the Alps and Mount Bullenstinder in Iceland as notable examples. And while there's no question that these are mighty mountains, this one in Antarctica is significantly cleaner. There's just no comparison, really. It's much less rigid than any of the examples the skeptics give to try and debunk it. But look, it might just be a convenient mountain. We don't claim to know either way, but it's interesting to look at and ponder, wouldn't you agree? Now, along with all of these ancient discoveries and the revelation of our distant past, there's also the conversation of the Richat structure, sometimes called the Eye of the Sahara, or Heart of Feathers in Arabic, which is commonly believed by many today to be a remnant